Hello, my dear friends. Today I want to share a beautiful story with you. A story about a young boy, his dreams, and a magical day in Paris. Learning English is not just about grammar, vocabulary, or passing exams. It's about opening doors to new worlds, meeting new people, and discovering yourself along the way. In this story, you'll meet Alex, a student with a big dream, to learn English and explore the world confidently. His journey takes him to Paris, the city of love, light, and endless inspiration. This story is written in a simple and conversational style, so everyone can enjoy it and feel connected. Whether you're learning English or just looking for a heartwarming story, this tale will transport you to Paris and let you see the beauty of learning through Alex's eyes. The story is easy to follow and filled with real-life moments that many of us can relate to. So, my dear friends, let's start Alex's story and see how a single day in Paris becomes a life-changing experience for him. Hi, my name is Alex. I'm 20 years old, and I'm a university student. I come from a small town where opportunities to learn English are limited. Ever since I was a child, I've loved the idea of traveling and meeting people from all over the world. But there was one problem. I wasn't confident in speaking English. I understood the basics, but when it came to talking, my words would freeze, and I'd feel nervous. One day, I decided to do something bold. I saved up money, packed my bags, and booked a trip to Paris. You might wonder, why Paris if you want to learn English? Well, Paris is an international city filled with people from all over the world. It's a place where you can hear English being spoken in cafes, museums, and even on the streets. Plus, I'd always dreamed of seeing the Eiffel Tower and tasting authentic croissants. When I landed in Paris, I was both excited and nervous. The city was even more beautiful than I imagined. The streets were lined with charming buildings, cafes buzzed with chatter, and the aroma of fresh bread filled the air. But I wasn't there just to enjoy the sights. I had a mission: to practice speaking English every chance I got. My first stop was a small cafe near my hotel. The waiter greeted me in French, but I replied, "Hello? Do you speak English?" He smiled and said, "Yes, of course." That was my first small victory. I ordered a coffee and asked him about the best places to visit in Paris. He suggested the Louvre Museum, Montmartre, and a bookshop called Shakespeare and Company, where English-speaking tourists often gathered. With my map in hand, I set out to explore. At the Louvre, I was amazed by the artwork. I even spoke to a group of tourists from Australia. "Hi, I'm Alex. Are you visiting Paris too?" I asked. They were friendly and told me about their travels. I listened carefully, trying to catch every word. When I spoke, they encouraged me and corrected my mistakes gently. It felt great to have a real conversation in English. Next, I walked up the hill to Montmartre, a neighborhood filled with artists and musicians. There, I met a street performer who sang songs in English. I clapped along and later talked to him. "You sing beautifully," I said. He laughed and thanked me, then asked where I was from. We talked for a while, and he even taught me a few phrases to sound more natural. By the afternoon, I reached Shakespeare and Company, the famous English language bookstore. It was like stepping into a different world. Shelves were filled with books, and cozy corners invited visitors to read. I joined a small group discussion about classic novels. At first I was shy, but when I introduced myself, everyone welcomed me. We talked about books, life, and dreams. It was a magical experience, and I didn't feel judged for my English. As the day went on, I realized something important. Learning English isn't just about speaking perfectly. It's about being brave, making connections, and embracing mistakes. Every interaction in Paris taught me something new, whether it was ordering food, asking for directions, or simply saying thank you. By evening, I found myself standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, lit up against the night sky. I thought about all the people I'd met and the conversations I'd had. Paris had given me more than I expected. It wasn't just a city to visit. It was a place where I learned to believe in myself. As I stood in front of the Eiffel Tower, soaking in the beauty of the glowing lights, I felt a surge of confidence. Paris had already given me so much in just a few hours. I didn't want the day to end, so I decided to explore a bit more. There was a small crepe stand nearby, and the aroma of freshly cooked crepes filled the air. I walked up to the vendor, a cheerful man who seemed to enjoy chatting with customers. "Bonsoir," he greeted me. I smiled and replied, "Good evening. Do you speak English?" He nodded and said, "A little, but I like to practice." This made me laugh. "Me too. I'm learning English." He asked me where I was from, and as he prepared my crepe, we exchanged stories. His name was Jacques, and he had been working at the stand for 10 years. "I meet many people from all over the world," he said. "Everyone has their own story, and it's wonderful." I realized how similar Jacques and I were. We both enjoyed meeting people and learning from them. Before leaving, I thanked him and said, "Your crepes are delicious. Merci beaucoup." He smiled and wished me a great evening. As I walked back toward my hotel, I passed by a small park. There was a group of students sitting on the grass, talking and laughing. I hesitated for a moment, but then decided to approach them. "Hi, is this a study group?" I asked, hoping I wasn't interrupting. One of them, a girl with curly hair, looked up and smiled. "Not really. We're just hanging out. You can join us if you want." I sat down and introduced myself. They were international students studying in Paris. Each one of them spoke multiple languages, and English was the common language they used to communicate. "We understand how hard it can be to learn a new language," said Maria, one of the students. "When I first started learning English, I was so shy, but the more I practiced, the easier it got." Their words encouraged me. We spent hours talking about everything, our favorite books, movies, and even silly things like our favorite ice cream flavors. Every time I struggled to find the right word, they helped me patiently. One of the students, Liam, shared his secret for improving his English. "When I was learning, I used to record myself speaking. It was awkward at first, but it helped me a lot. You should try it." I made a mental note to give it a try. We exchanged contact information before parting ways. "If you ever need someone to practice with, just message us," Maria said. By the time I returned to my hotel, I was exhausted but happy. I sat by the window looking out at the Parisian streets. The city had shown me kindness, patience, and the beauty of stepping out of my comfort zone. I thought about the conversations I had that day with Jacques, the tourists, the bookstore group, and the students. Each interaction had taught me something valuable, not just about English, but also about connecting with people. Before going to bed, I wrote in my journal, "Today was unforgettable. I learned that language isn't just about words, it's about courage, connection, and curiosity. I still have a long way to go, but I'm proud of myself for taking the first step. Thank you, Paris, for this beautiful lesson." The next morning, I woke up feeling energized. I knew my time in Paris wasn't over yet. There were still so many places to see, people to meet, and opportunities to learn. As I packed my bag for another day of exploring, I promised myself one thing: to speak English as much as possible, no matter how many mistakes I made. After all, every conversation was a step closer to my goal. Paris was more than just a city for me. It was a teacher, a friend, and a source of inspiration. And I couldn't wait to see what the next day would bring. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my hotel window. The sunlight was streaming in, and the view of the Parisian streets below filled me with a sense of excitement. Today, I decided to visit more local spots and continue my mission of learning English by talking to as many people as possible. After a quick breakfast of croissants and coffee at the hotel, I grabbed my bag and set out. My first stop was a nearby market I'd read about, a place where locals shopped for fresh produce, bread, and flowers. As I wandered through the stalls, I noticed how lively the atmosphere was. Vendors were shouting out their prices, customers were chatting, and there was a warm, welcoming buzz in the air. At one stall selling beautiful bouquets of flowers, I saw an older lady buying a bunch of roses. I couldn't resist starting a conversation. "Excuse me," I said. "Do you speak English?" She turned to me with a kind smile. "Yes, a little. How can I help you?" "I'm Alex," I said, introducing myself. "I'm visiting Paris to improve my English. Your flowers are beautiful. Are they for someone special?" She chuckled softly and said, "Thank you, Alex." "Yes, they are for my granddaughter. She loves roses." We talked for a few minutes, and she told me about her family and her love for gardening. It was a simple conversation, but it made me realize how much confidence I'd gained in just one day. Before leaving, I thanked her and said, "It was nice talking to you." "Have a wonderful day," she replied. "You too, Alex." "Good luck with your English. You're doing great." As I walked away, I felt a sense of pride. Small interactions like this were exactly what I needed to build my confidence. Next, I made my way to a local park where I'd heard people often gathered to play chess or practice music. When I arrived, I saw a group of young people sitting under a tree, playing guitars and singing. The music was beautiful, and I couldn't help but stop and listen. One of them noticed me and waved. "Hey, do you want to join us?" I hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. "Sure, I'm Alex, by the way." They introduced themselves, and we started chatting. Most of them were students like me, but from different countries, Spain, Italy, and even Japan. They spoke English to communicate with each other, which made it the perfect opportunity for me to practice. We talked about music, our favorite artists, and our dreams for the future. They even taught me a few phrases in their own languages, and in return, I shared some fun English idioms I'd learned. One of them, Sophia, asked, "Alex, how do you feel about learning English in Paris? It's not the usual place for it." I thought for a moment before answering. It's amazing. Paris is such an international city, and everyone I've met has been so patient and encouraging. It's not just about learning the language, it's about connecting with people and sharing stories. Sophia smiled. That's a great perspective. Language is more than just words. It's a way to connect hearts. We spent hours talking, laughing, and even singing together. By the time I left the park, I felt like I'd made new friends and memories I'd treasure forever. In the afternoon, I decided to visit the Notre Dame Cathedral. The line to enter was long, so I struck up a conversation with the people in front of me. They were a couple from Canada, and we quickly bonded over our love for travel and culture. "You're brave for learning English in a foreign city," the man said. "When we first started traveling, we were nervous about speaking new languages too. But it's the best way to learn." As we toured the cathedral together, they gave me tips on improving my English. "Try reading books aloud," the woman suggested. "It helps with pronunciation and confidence." I thanked them for their advice and said goodbye as we parted ways. By the time evening came, I was feeling a mix of exhaustion and contentment. I made one final stop, a quiet cafe near the Seine River. I ordered tea and sat by the window, reflecting on the day. A waiter approached and asked in English, "How was your day?" I smiled and replied, "It was incredible. I met so many kind people and learned a lot." He nodded. That's the beauty of Paris. It's not just about the sights, it's about the people you meet and the stories you share. As I sipped my tea, I thought about how much I'd grown since arriving in Paris. Every conversation, every smile, and every small victory had brought me closer to my goal. That night, as I lay in bed, I wrote in my journal again. Today was another unforgettable day. Paris has shown me that learning English is not just a journey of words, but a journey of courage and connection. I've learned so much, not just about the language, but about myself. Thank you, Paris, for teaching me that the world is full of possibilities if you're willing to step out of your comfort zone. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The previous 2 days had been incredible, but I felt like I'd only scratched the surface of what Paris had to offer. Today, I wanted to try something new, visit a language exchange cafe I'd read about online. After a hearty breakfast, I set out for the cafe, tucked away on a quiet street in the Latin Quarter. When I arrived, I saw a charming little sign outside that read, "Practice languages, make friends." The place was buzzing with people chatting in different languages. I stepped inside, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. At the counter, a friendly barista greeted me. "Hello, is this your first time here?" she asked in clear English. "Yes," I said, smiling. "I'm Alex. I'm visiting Paris to learn English." She handed me a name tag and said, "Welcome, Alex. Write your name and the languages you speak or want to practice. Then find a table with a flag for English speakers." Everyone here is friendly, so don't be shy. I nodded and took a deep breath as I wrote my name and English learner on the tag. Then I spotted a table with a small British flag and walked over. "Hi, is this seat taken?" I asked. A young man with glasses looked up and grinned. "Not at all. Have a seat." "I'm Mark from London. What about you?" "I'm Alex well, not from an English-speaking country," I said with a chuckle. "That's fine. Everyone starts somewhere," Mark replied warmly. Soon, the table filled with more people, students, travelers, and even a local Parisian who was also learning English. We introduced ourselves, and Mark started a simple icebreaker game. "Let's go around and share one interesting fact about ourselves," he said. When it was my turn, I said, "I love reading and writing stories. It helps me learn new words in English." "That's great," Mark said. "Do you write in English or your native language?" "A bit of both," I replied, "but I want to write more in English." The conversation flowed easily after that. We talked about our hobbies, favorite books, and even funny cultural misunderstandings we'd experienced while learning new languages. I felt a little nervous at first, but everyone was patient and encouraging. One of the group members, a girl named Lily from Australia, gave me some advice. "Alex, you're doing great. The key is to speak without fear. Even if you make mistakes, people will appreciate your effort. That's how we all learn." Her words stayed with me. Later, Mark suggested a group activity, role-playing everyday scenarios in English. We acted out situations like ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, and shopping at a store. It was both fun and educational. During my turn, I played the role of a tourist asking for help. "Excuse me," I began. "Can you tell me where the Louvre Museum is?" Mark, playing the local, replied, "Of course. Go straight down this street, then turn left at the big fountain." We all laughed at the exaggerated accents and playful improvisations, but I realized how useful these exercises were. They helped me feel more confident about speaking English in real-life situations. As the afternoon went on, I noticed how much more comfortable I'd become. I wasn't just learning English, I was forming connections with people from all over the world. Before leaving, the group exchanged contact information. Mark said, "If you ever need someone to practice with, just send me a message." "I will. Thank you so much for today," I said, genuinely grateful. That evening, I decided to take a walk along the Seine River. The city was glowing under the golden lights, and the atmosphere was magical. I stopped at a street vendor selling souvenirs and decided to test my newfound confidence. "Hello," I said. "I'd like to buy a postcard, please." The vendor smiled and asked, "For someone special?" "For my family," I replied. "I want to show them how beautiful Paris is." He handed me a postcard with a stunning view of the Eiffel Tower and said, "Here you go. Your English is very good." "Thank you," I said, feeling a surge of pride. As I walked back to my hotel, I reflected on the day. The language exchange cafe had been a turning point for me. It wasn't just about learning English. It was about stepping out of my comfort zone, embracing my mistakes, and connecting with people. Back in my room, I wrote in my journal again. Today was amazing. I spoke more English than I ever thought I could. I'm learning that mistakes are just stepping stones to success. Paris is teaching me more than I ever imagined, not just about language, but about life. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of excitement and anticipation. My experiences so far in Paris had been transformative, and I was eager to see what new opportunities the day would bring. I decided to start with a visit to a local bookstore I'd read about, called Shakespeare and Company. It was known for its cozy atmosphere, vintage books, and being a haven for English learners and book lovers alike. When I arrived, I was greeted by the scent of old books and the sight of shelves packed to the brim. The store was bustling with people, some browsing, some chatting, and others reading quietly in little nooks. "Hello, welcome," a cheerful woman behind the counter greeted me. "Let me know if I can help you find anything." I smiled and replied, "Thank you. I'm looking for books that are good for learning English. Something not too difficult." She nodded thoughtfully. "I have just the section for you. Follow me." She led me to a corner where there were books categorized by language levels. I picked up a copy of The Little Prince, a book I'd heard was simple yet beautiful. "You'll love that one," she said. "It's a wonderful story and great for building vocabulary." Feeling encouraged, I decided to take it a step further. "Do you have any book clubs or events here? I'd love to practice speaking English with others." Her eyes lit up. "We actually have a storytelling event this evening. People take turns sharing stories. Some read from books, others tell personal stories. It's a mix of English learners and native speakers. You should join." I hesitated for a moment. Reading aloud in front of a group felt daunting. But then I reminded myself of my promise to embrace every opportunity. "Okay, I'll come," I said with a nervous smile. The hours leading up to the event were a mix of excitement and anxiety. I spent the afternoon preparing by reading through The Little Prince and practicing a short passage I planned to share. I even jotted down a few lines in my notebook about my experiences in Paris so far, just in case I felt brave enough to speak without reading. When I arrived at the bookstore that evening, the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. People sat in a semicircle, sipping tea and chatting softly. The event host, a tall man with a kind smile, introduced himself as David. "Hi, Alex," he said after I introduced myself. "Are you ready to share something tonight?" "I think so," I replied, feeling a flutter of nerves. He gave me an encouraging pat on the shoulder. "You'll do great. Just speak from the heart." As the event began, I listened intently as others shared their stories. One woman from India read a poem she had written in English, while a man from Canada recounted a hilarious travel mishap. Each story was unique, and the supportive atmosphere made me feel less nervous. Finally, it was my turn. I stood up, clutching my copy of The Little Prince and my notebook. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "My name is Alex. I'm visiting Paris to learn English, and this is my first time sharing a story in front of a group." The audience smiled and nodded encouragingly. "I'd like to start with a short passage from this book," I said, holding up The Little Prince. "It's about a little boy who learns about life through his adventures. It's kind of like me, learning about life here in Paris. I read the passage slowly, focusing on my pronunciation. When I finished, there was a round of gentle applause. Feeling a surge of confidence, I decided to share a little from my notebook. I also wrote something about my experience in Paris. It's not perfect, but I hope you like it. I spoke about my first visit to the cafe, meeting Mark and Lily, and how each small conversation was helping me grow. I talked about how Paris was more than just a city to me. It was a teacher, challenging me to step out of my comfort zone. When I finished, the audience clapped warmly, and a woman in the front row said, "That was beautiful, Alex. Thank you for sharing." I sat down, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. For the first time, I realized that my journey wasn't just about learning English. It was about sharing my voice and connecting with others. After the event, several people came up to me to chat. One of them was a French student named Claire, who was also learning English. "Alex, you were so inspiring," she said. "I'm learning English too, but I'm always too shy to speak. How do you find the courage?" I thought for a moment and replied, "It's not easy, but I remind myself that mistakes are part of learning. People are kinder than we think, especially when they see you trying." She smiled and said, "Maybe we can practice together sometime." "I'd like that," I said. As I walked back to my hotel that night, the streets of Paris felt different. They weren't just the backdrop to my journey. They were part of it. Every cafe, every bookstore, every conversation was a step forward, not just in learning English, but in becoming the person I wanted to be. Back in my room, I opened my journal and wrote, "Today, I found my voice." Sharing my story felt scary, but it was also freeing. Paris has taught me that language isn't just about words, it's about connection. I'm not just learning English, I'm learning to express myself, to be brave, and to embrace the beauty of every moment. As I closed my journal, I couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning, and I couldn't wait to see where the next day would take me. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound sense of energy. Paris felt less like a foreign city and more like a companion on my journey. After last night's storytelling event, I was eager to take on new challenges and practice speaking English with even more people. As I stepped out of my hotel, the sun was shining, and the streets were already alive with the bustle of Parisians going about their day. My first stop was a local market I had heard about, Marché des Enfants Rouges, one of the oldest in Paris. I figured it would be a great place to observe the culture and, of course, strike up a conversation or two. The market was a feast for the senses. Stalls overflowed with fresh fruits, colorful flowers, and delicious pastries. The smell of fresh bread mingled with the aroma of spices, and the chatter of vendors created a lively symphony. I approached a fruit vendor, a kind-looking woman in her 50s. "Hello," I began, mustering my confidence. "Do you speak English?" "A little," she replied with a warm smile. "Great! I am learning English," I said. Then I paused, trying to form my next sentence. "Can you tell me, what is the name of this fruit?" I pointed to a pile of bright orange fruits. "Ah, this is apricot. In English, you say apricot," she explained slowly. Apricot, I repeated, mimicking her pronunciation. Yes, very good, she said, clapping her hands lightly. I felt a small thrill of accomplishment. It was a simple interaction, but every moment like this built my confidence. After buying a few apricots, I decided to sit on a nearby bench to enjoy them. A young man, probably around my age, sat down beside me. He was sketching something in a notebook, and curiosity got the better of me. Hello, I said hesitantly. What are you drawing? He looked up, surprised but not unfriendly. Oh, hi, I'm drawing the market. I love to sketch places like this. His English was fluent, with a light French accent. That's amazing, I said, leaning slightly to get a better look at his sketch. I'm Alex. I'm learning English. Nice to meet you, Alex. I'm Julian, he replied. Learning English in Paris? That's interesting. I laughed. Yes, it sounds strange, I know, but I wanted to visit Paris, and practicing English here has been an adventure. Julian chuckled. Well, if you ever want to practice, I can help. I studied English in school, so I know how challenging it can be. We exchanged contact information, and Julian promised to show me some of his favorite spots in Paris. Later that afternoon, I decided to visit the Musée d'Orsay, a museum I had been curious about. As I wandered through the stunning art galleries, I overheard a group of tourists speaking English. I hesitated for a moment, but then decided to join their conversation. Excuse me, I said, my heart pounding a little. Are you from England? One of them, a woman in her 30s, turned to me with a friendly smile. No, we're from the United States. Are you visiting Paris, too? Yes, I said, trying to keep my words clear. I'm learning English, and I want to practice speaking. That's wonderful, she said. Your English is already pretty good. What's your favorite part of Paris so far? I thought for a moment before replying, the people. Everyone has been so kind, and I learn something new every day. Our conversation continued as we walked through the museum, and by the time we parted ways, I felt a little more at ease with my English. That evening, Julian invited me to join him and some friends for dinner. When I arrived at the cozy little restaurant, I was greeted with warm smiles and cheerful chatter. Julian introduced me to his friends, most of whom spoke English fluently. Alex is learning English and exploring Paris at the same time, Julian explained to the group. That's brave, said a woman named Camille. Learning a language is hard enough, but doing it in a new city? Impressive. I laughed nervously. It's not always easy, but I enjoy it. As we ate, I listened carefully to their conversations, picking up new words and phrases. Occasionally, I joined in, and they were patient and encouraging. By the end of the night, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. These moments, sharing a meal, exchanging stories, and connecting with people, were what made my journey in Paris truly unforgettable. Before heading back to my hotel, I stopped by the Seine River. The city lights reflected beautifully on the water, and I took a moment to reflect on my day. Each interaction, no matter how small, was helping me grow, not just in my ability to speak English, but as a person. I opened my journal and wrote, Today, I learned that language is more than just words. It's about connection, understanding, and sharing experiences. Paris has taught me to embrace every moment, even the challenging ones. I may not speak English perfectly yet, but I'm learning something far more important: the courage to try. As I closed my journal, I felt a sense of peace. Paris had become more than just a place to visit. It was a part of my story, a chapter that I would carry with me forever.